My name is Mark Allison, and I work at the Center for Social Innovation, and I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. On behalf of CPD, I would like to thank all of you for joining us. Today's webinar is an introduction to the Consolidated Plan Template in IDIS Online. Before we begin, I would like to make a few logistical announcements. Today's webinar will last approximately 1 hour. The webinar is being recorded. The recording and the PowerPoint presentation will be posted next week on the Consolidated Plan website on the TA and training page. As an attendee of this webinar, your microphone will be automatically muted. Please listen to the presentation through your computer speakers if possible. This means that you'll need to turn on and up your speakers on your computer. If you experience difficulty with your computer speakers, you may listen by phone at the number posted in the meeting room. Due to the large number of attendees, there may be a slight delay in the advancement of some of the slides. If you experience any other technical difficulties, please let us know by using the Q&A box on your screen. You may also submit content-related questions using that same box, and we will try to address them during the presentation. Immediately following the webinar, you'll be directed to a satisfaction survey. Participants are strongly encouraged to respond to the evaluation to inform the delivery of future webinars. Today's webinar will feature the following presenters: Meg Barclay, Project Manager, and Caitlin Ott, Assistant Project Manager, both of the CPD office. And now I'd like to pass this over to Meg to begin the presentation.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks again for joining today's orientation webinar for the Consolidated Plan Template in IDIS Online. The purpose of today's presentation is to introduce and demonstrate some of the features of the new Consolidated Plan Template in IDIS Online. The template is part of CPD's eCon planning suite, which also includes CPD maps and a new expanded planning database. As we will see in today's webinar, the Consolidated Plan was designed to be the result of grantee priority setting based on community participation and an integrated assessment of need, market conditions, and available resources. However, because of limited information about need and market conditions and a lack of useful tools, grantees' planning processes leading to the submission of their consolidated plans have often focused on data gathering and budgeting rather than a planning or a data-driven process. The eCon Planning Suite is designed to support CPD grantees to create need-driven and place-based plans. By using the tools in the eCon Planning Suite, grantees will be able to focus on analyzing data rather than on gathering it, and using this data and the planning template to set priorities, leverage resources, and develop effective strategies that improve neighborhoods. A quick overview of the webinar agenda. We'll start with some more background on the eCon Planning Suite. Much of this will look familiar to you if you were on the webinar last week, but we thought it would be good to go over it again. Also, we'll discuss the purpose and the design of the ConPlan template in IDIS. Again, will also look familiar if you were on the webinar from last week. Then we'll get to the meat of the presentation and spend most of the time today in demonstrations about getting started in the template, some of the features of the template, and preparing for submission, preparing a plan for submission. And then we'll talk about implementation timeline and key resources for you to use as you use the template. And we'll have some time at the end for questions. We also encourage you to just submit questions on the content as you go, where there are breaks in the presentation or as we're waiting for things during the demonstration. We could also cover those during that time. The eCon Planning Suite includes 3 elements: expanded planning data, CPD Maps data mapping tool, and the electronic submission template that we'll talk about today, that were designed to support need-driven, place-based planning, decision-making, and public participation through expanded, transparent data and tools. The expanded planning data not only feeds CPD maps, but also the electronic submission template, and the mapping tool is designed to make that data publicly available, easier to understand and to manage. It's designed to be user-friendly and to support needs and place-based investment. And it's also integrated with the electronic submission template that grantees hopefully could use to prepare themselves. And this is intended to also provide greater efficiency for grantees who are preparing their plans and incorporate it into the grant and reporting system to create a more seamless grant management process. And it connects goals to activities and outcomes, again, to create a more seamless grants management process. As we were preparing and designing the Consolidated Plan tool, we actually did a lot of work looking at the Consolidated Plan regulatory framework as it exists in 24 CFR Part 91. These regulations were established in 1995 to create efficiencies for grantees by establishing common planning requirements for CDBG, home, ESG, and HOPWA. The graphic on this slide depicts the structure of the existing regulations, which actually envision a process where a multi-year strategy and subsequent funding decisions are driven equally by public participation, needs assessment, and market analysis. And while this makes a lot of sense in concept, the initial implementation of the Consolidated Plan didn't accomplish some of the goals of the regulations because, for one thing, HUD never prescribed a form, which HUD is allowed to do by regulation. And so our expectations are not clear to grantees, and the plans can be difficult to also understand for the public. And in practice, it's more difficult to live up to the data-driven planning process laid out in the regulations due to inadequate technology, inaccessibility of data, and the lack of any explicit connection between planning and performance. And so those are some of the things that we are trying to solve through the tools available in the eCon Planning Suite. The template and systems improvements we'll tell you about today take advantage of recent advances in technology and data, making it possible to better reach the aspirations of the regulations as they're described here. So the template itself is designed to facilitate integrated planning and decision-making by taking the current structure of the Consolidated Plan Management Process tool that's used by a lot of grantees as a word-based template that is organized around the four sort of core issues in a consolidated plan: housing, homelessness, special needs, and community development, but really ends up producing sort of four separate smaller plans where the needs, the market inventory, priorities, and goals are considered separately for each of these issues. The template in the Consolidated Plan, or in IDIS, is reorganized to be focused on the needs and the market inventory for those four issue areas together so that it's easier to assess relative priority and you end up with one set of goals. The template, therefore, is designed to set HUD's expectations, make it clear when those expectations have been met, eliminate repetition as much as possible, and promote collaboration across we know that in a lot of grantees' jurisdictions, different agencies administer programs for housing, homelessness, special needs, and community development. And it's harder to collaborate when you're just preparing for separate plans and submitting them. So this more integrated planning tool is meant to promote collaboration across those agencies. And it's also based on HUD-provided data, so that should also save grantees a lot of time by allowing them to focus on what the data is telling them rather than just gathering it in the format that is needed for the plan. So the Consolidated Planning Template is designed to integrate the components of the grants management cycle into one cohesive planning framework within IDIS. With required data pre-populated in the template, grantees can more efficiently develop goals that respond to needs. And the tool also integrates the CON plan, the annual action plan, and the CAPER into IDIS, where grantees are already reporting on activities and accomplishments that are being generated with these funds, and the CAPER, and the work that grantees are already doing in IDIS to talk about and to draw down funds and talk about how they are addressing the needs in their communities. We think that this template will be more useful as a planning tool to jurisdictions. It's designed to support planning beyond budget and compliance by integrating data from CPD maps to highlight need-based and data-driven decision-making, facilitating collaboration with partners, the public, and other planning processes by making a lot of this data public and creating a structure within the plan to describe consultation and public participation activities. And it incorporates other public and private funding leveraged by grantees in a way that hopefully will help to highlight leveraging opportunities. Now, this is a quick overview of the demonstrations we're going to go through in a little bit more detail here in a minute. The desk guide for the Consolidated Plan Template and IDIS is available at the URL that you see on your screen now. I'm told you should be able to click on that if you wanted to go and download the desk guide while the webinar is going on, but the slides will also be made available online at a later date, very soon, in the next couple of days, so that you can get those URLs out of the PowerPoint that way as well. The demonstration will cover getting started by establishing access to IDIS and the planning modules, adding a plan, and then we'll also demonstrate features of the Consolidated Plan Template, including the simplified data collection, default data and adding alternate data sources, customizing of plans with maps, images, data, tables, and the structure of the strategic plan and annual action plan templates and how those are connected. And we'll also talk about preparing plans for submission, including quality checks, printing a plan for citizen participation, and the ways to submit a plan in IDIS to your local CPD offices. So the first piece of the demonstration will cover getting started by establishing access to IDIS and also the planning modules, and granting consolidated plan and CAPER access privileges, and accessing plan modules in IDIS themselves. So this first slide is really meant to talk about how you can establish access for new IDIS users that don't already have access to IDIS, but you may want to get them access to IDIS since they may now need to get into the system to be able to work on the consolidated plan. And we really recommend and urge you to begin this process early. We are going to work to make it as quick as possible, but sometimes this can take a while. So depending on when your plans are going, if you're going to have a consolidated plan due very soon, we encourage you to get started on this right away, but you should get started on this early no matter what. So the form to request IDIS access for new users is available again at the URL that you see on your screen, and you should be able to click on that if you want to now. You're going to fill out the entire form as directed in the instructions. However, the one difference is when you get to the program areas section of the form, check other. The box that section of the form is here on this slide as a screenshot. You're going to want to check other here, and then actually enter the kind of you're going to check other here and enter the type of privileges that you want to grant to that new user in this box. And your options are create, edit, submit, view, edit, and view. And we recommend that you limit the number of users that have access to the create, edit, submit type of privileges, just because you don't want somebody to accidentally submit a plan to HUD before it's ready. So once you've decided, or once you've filled out this form and you've had it signed by the right people as described in the instructions, you'll have the form notarized as directed in the instructions, submit it to your local CPD representative, and that representative will forward the request to HUD HQ. And we will work to make sure that those requests get processed as quickly as possible. So establishing privileges for existing grantee IDIS users. So these are users on your staff now who have access to IDIS, and you want to get them access to privileges to access the plan templates. So your local administrator will have this admin tab when they open IDIS. And for each user that you want to provide access to, you'll search for them, either their name using these fields or their user ID is the quickest way. And then once you've found the user whose privileges you want to edit, click Edit. And then under Edit User Profile, page 1, under Existing User Roles, click the grantee link here. And then you'll want to edit their access. So you'll click on this link here. In the Edit Access screen, so this is this 4th step here, down here at the bottom in the left-hand corner, you'll see where the options for the plan privileges are. And there are separate plan privileges for the Consolidated Plan and the Annual Action Plan here, and the CAPER, considering you may have different people working on those at different points in the planning cycle. And so those privileges are separate, and you'll want to provide the privileges that you wish to provide for the user that you're editing. So the next time the users log into the plan, they will click on the Plans, Projects, and Activities tab here, and the Consolidated Plan, Annual Action Plan, and Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, or CAPER, options would appear here depending on the privileges that you gave the user. If you are the admin person and you're giving yourself privileges, you would need to log out of IDIS and then log back in. If you're, in some cases, I think in some cases we're finding that some grantees may not have a local administrator designated. The person who was designated local administrator may have left the jurisdiction and another one hasn't been designated. Your field office should also be able to do this for you. But you would also want to contact the field office about establishing a local administrator if you don't have one. Next, we're going to demonstrate these steps for adding a plan in IDIS. And to do that, I'm going to go into IDIS. You're going to have to bear with me while I log on. I have access to several different grants. This is in UAT, the User Acceptance Testing Environment. So I'm choosing Philadelphia because Philadelphia is a larger entitlement that has all of the grants, but this is in User Acceptance Testing, so if anyone from Philadelphia is on the line, I'm not changing your plan. So now you can see I have Consolidated Plan access here. I'm going to choose Add under the Consolidated Plan, and I'm going to pick a strategic planning cycle that starts in 2013, ends in 2017. We'll call it Demonstration. We'll call the version Demo. It's not an amendment. It has all of the grants here. I'm going to cover the data, these data sources later, so we'll skip that. But the next thing that you want to do is select the public housing agency, if there are any public housing agencies associated with your jurisdiction, because this is how some of the data that pre-populates the template will get pulled into your plan. So since I'm in Philadelphia's plan, I'm going to search for Philadelphia. And I found the housing authority I'm interested in adding. So I just I check on it, click Select. And there, as I said, there are some screens, the public housing screens within the Consolidated Plan menu that are populated with data from the Public Housing Authority submits to HUD. And so that's why we had to select the housing agency here. So now that I have the plan, now that I've entered this information about the plan, I can click Save. Oh, whoops. This covers the different types. I skipped this one. The Consolidated Plan is for, in this case, it's for a grantee. If you're a consortia, You can choose consortia, or there's also a regional planning option, and we'll cover that later, but the lead in if there's a group of entitlements or grantees that are looking to create a regional strategy but maintain individual action plans, there is an option to do that. We'll cover that in a later webinar, but I'm going to select grantee for now. Now it should let me save. So it takes us straight to the menu. This is the main menu for the consolidated plan. Now you see we can start opening these screens and entering data. But just to show you now that you have a plan in the system, if you wanted to go back to that plan that you have established, you can actually, what you need to do now that you have one, you're not adding one, you're searching for one. So click Search under Consolidated Plan. Our plan started in 2013, so I'm going to choose that one. I click Search. And we see here's the plan that we just created. And I'll click Edit. And Edit will allow me to change the data that's in the plan, add data to the plan. View would just allow me to look at it and not make any changes. So that takes us to the next section of the demonstration. I'm going to need to get back into there we go. The next section of the demonstration involves demonstrating using the features of the Consolidated Plan Template. And we'll cover showing you some of the ways that we're trying to collect data in a simple, minimal way. We'll show you default data that's already provided within these screens and also show you how to add alternate data sources. We'll show you how to customize a plan with maps, data, images, and text. And we'll talk about the screens and the structure in the strategic plan and the annual action plan and show you how those things are connected. So now I'll go back to the demonstration. So to demonstrate the simplified data collection models that we've created here, we're going to use screen PR10, Consultation. And this is what you'll see when you open a screen like this here. These are some basic narrative text boxes allowing you to provide an introduction for this particular screen. Most screens have an introduction. And then some questions about, in this case, efforts to enhance coordination. That is a requirement in the Consolidated Plan. Coordination with the continuums of care. These are new requirements with the new HARS regulations that did change the Consolidated Plan regulations. But here, we'll show you how we're collecting data or collecting information on the consultation process. So the requirement from the regulations is describe the agencies, groups, organizations, and others who participate in agencies and other entities. And so here you can select the organization that was consulted with, and you can either use an organization that is already in IDIS, so we're not creating multiple records if there's agencies that you may have entered into IDIS as partners or subrecipients, or you can add a new organization. So we'll start with searching for existing organizations, and I'm just going to look for organizations in the city of Philadelphia. And for the purpose of this, I'm just going to pick the first one, 1260 Housing Development Corporation. And then I click Select. And now you see that organization's name is showing up here, and we can say that's a housing organization. You need to pick at least one of these. You can pick multiple of this from this menu. You can also You can also talk about which section of the plan was addressed by the consultation. So we'll say the housing needs assessment was addressed by this consultation. We can describe and also how the agency was consulted and what the anticipated outcomes of the consultation. And this is just a regular text box, so you can type something in there if there's just talking about how talking to this group changed what you were going to do in the plan. And then you can add another. And the same way, we'll add an organization this time. Going to enter some generic information to get us to where we can save this organization. And I click Save and Return. Now I can search for that organization here. There it is. Oh, I think I added before when I was practicing this. So we'll select this one the same way we selected the other one before, and now we see it shows up. We can decide what kind of agency it is. It's a PHA. So it addressed public housing needs. And you can keep doing that until you've covered everything. So I'm going to click Save here, and that just saves everything that's happened on the screen since I opened it, but doesn't take me back to the menu, so I can continue on in this screen. Another feature of this screen is allowing you to describe other local, regional, state, or federal planning efforts that were considered when preparing the plan. The one required one is the continuum of care. Again, that's a result of changes to the Consolidated Plan regulations from the HARTH Act. So you can describe the continuum of care plan. You can also add another planning effort. Say your consolidated plan overlaps with some of the goals of a regional transportation plan. I could talk about how the goals, and I can keep that one there. You can always delete anything that you add here, or once I have multiple ones here, I can also change the sort order, so I could change how they appear in the printed plan. We will discuss how to print a plan later on. So once I have this whole screen how I like it, I can save and return to the main menu. So next we'll show you how the default data looks in a screen, and we'll use the NA10 Housing Needs Assessment screen. The screen will open, and you'll see here how all of these tables already have the data in them. It's already been pre-populated in any of these tables. And if you want to use all of the data that's already in here, you can do that. But let's say the city of Philadelphia has a local survey that has better data from 2009 than the data that we used. We used the ACS. So I can create an alternate data source, or here I actually have one that I had created again when I was practicing. But I want to add a survey data source. Survey, and we ask for some basic information about the data source that will then be included as an appendix in the plan as it prints out again. So you would answer these questions, and now that source is available to select for the purpose of the table that we're looking at. So I select that source, here we see it is, and now I can edit these fields. So I know that, let's say, as you change the data, anything that's calculated will also change. So now so now this percentage has changed to 2. Instead of 14% drop, now it's only 2%. You see how that works. And then in the notes, you can describe which fields that you change. So save that, and it will be there. So now we'll show you how you can also customize the template. You'll see throughout where there's a table like this, usually there's this set of links about adding a GIS map, adding GIS data, adding a JPEG, adding text, or adding a table. So we can start with how you would add a GIS map. So you click on that link. Another window will open that will take you to CPD Maps. And it will automatically zoom to your jurisdiction. So if I wanted to, since I'm in the demographics table here, I could actually find some other demographic variables under community indicators that I may want to use also. So we have the change in population here from 2000 to the 2005 through 2009 ACS census. So if I wanted to show a map of not only how the population has changed citywide, we have that number. I can show how it's changing by census tract. When I have the map the way I want it, I click on the print icon, and here you have this button to export to IDIS. I click export to IDIS, and you'll get this window saying it was successfully exported. Click OK. It's best to close that window because otherwise you'll end up with a lot of windows open. And if I want to see that it actually has been added, I click on the Save button. I can see this now it's in the new menu here underneath the table. To add the data, these labels here correspond to tables that are available in the reports from IDIS. Again, if I want a basic summary, it takes me back to CPD Maps. It'll zoom into Philadelphia. Now, I click on the Reports button, and I select either a set of tracks or the place, whatever I want that table, the data in that table to represent. So if I want to know some of that basic demographic data for a specific neighborhood in Philadelphia that I care about, let's just say it's that one, which is a big one, a big set of census tracts. But now I have another button here, Export to IDIS. Save again. And now that basic summary table is showing up in the menu. If you wanted to change the label for that table, you can click on the sequence button or the label button. Actually, you can click on the label button. And I can change that from basic summary to or whatever you want to call it. You see now it's got the new label. So there's other things that you could add in here. If you had maybe a chart or some other image that also maybe illustrated something having to do with this table or any other table where this is an option, you click on Add a JPEG, and unfortunately the little daisy wheel doesn't come up on these, so it takes about 5 seconds before the window will open. We're going to fix that in the next iteration. I have created a demo chart that is a JPEG. It has to be a JPEG file, so you can convert PDFs to JPEGs relatively simply, or save them as JPEGs. And now you see my chart and my image of my chart. If I want to make sure that I chose the right image, I can check it here using View, and that goes for any of these others as well. And here we see this is the chart that I wanted, and I could change the label here if I wanted to. Oh, no, I can't. I have to do that in the other one. And you see here, anytime you wanted to delete something, that's also an option. If you wanted to talk about the demographic data here, instead of saving it for talking about it in the introduction or later on in the screen, you can actually insert text here. So I'll call this text box test text. And I wanted to point out here, these buttons that allow you to format within the text box, they will actually format within the text box, but when you go to export your report into Word, that formatting doesn't stay. So we recommend not using that right now. That was a bug in the system that did not get caught before. To that in several places in the IDIS manual for the con plan, but just to in the final printout. So we don't recommend it at this time, but it will be fixed later. So here we see the test text boxes here, and the same thing goes for a table. And here, this is another thing that's not optimal, but you have to enter each row separately. If you say, or each cell separately, if you had a table that you wanted to paste in here right now, you can't do that. You're better off saving it as a JPEG and importing it as a JPEG. Show you that how you might. And you can save that table. And it shows up in the menu again. So anytime you wanted to change the labels on these things or change the sequence that they're going to show up in the report when the report is printed out in Word, you can click on either one of these headers. And you see here you can change the sequence, you can change the number in the sequence, and you can change any of these labels. Excuse me. So that covers how you can customize the template with these different types of objects. We have some questions that have been coming in we can cover right now, and I'll move on to the next section of the demo.
So before we move on to the next section, we had a couple of questions come in on what's been covered already that I want to answer. The first is how you find out who your local administrator is, and I would suggest asking your CPD local field office. The next is some grantees are having trouble assigning rights on the admin tab for the con plan, and if you are having trouble, I would suggest contacting the Consolidated Plan mailbox, and we can work directly with you. So that's conplan.mailbox@hud.gov. A couple of questions on the screen that Meg was just showing with data tables. is the data that pre-populates the fields coming from ACS, and is it there for all jurisdictions? It depends on which screen you're looking at, and the data citation is there as far as what type of data is there, but any data that's pre-populated is there for every single jurisdiction. The next question about the data is 2010 data available with this tool, or is 2009 the most recent? We are using the 2005 through 2009 ACS at the moment, but as soon as we receive the updated data from Census and we're able to work with it to make it fit these tables as appropriate, we will be updating with the 2010 data. And then one last question about whether or not you have to be a HUD entitlement community or state, receive a grant, a comp plan grant to access this tool. Yes, you have to be a grantee in order to receive access to IDIS, or consultants for grantees can also receive access and work on behalf of a grantee.
Oh yeah, that was something I meant to cover before. You, as a grantee local administrator for IDIS, could also request access through the same process that you use for staff, for somebody to have access to IDIS to work on your behalf. So you would use that same process that we covered on the earlier slides. So moving on to the strategic plan, here we have the menu for the strategic plan and the annual action plan underneath the needs assessment and the market analysis. And there are several screens that in the strategic plan are integrated, that they feed each other. The information that shows up in one screen will show up in another screen to be reflected there. So those screens in the strategic plan are SP10, Geographic Priorities, SP25, Priority Needs, SP30, oh, I'm sorry, not SP30, excuse me, SP35, Anticipated Resources, and SP45, Goals. And those are the ones we're going to cover today. So starting with Geographic Priorities, when you open this screen, if you have any geographic areas that you've designated in IDIS, those will automatically show up as options. So we have a number of areas here. You can also add, if you have a CDFI type of area, these are the types of areas that are already in, that are already designated in IDIS. Or you can add a local target area, which is a more general, any kind of area that you may have, or a strategy area like a neighborhood revitalization strategy, etc. So we're going to add a local target area. Sorry, this is taking a minute. Okay, we're going to add a local target area. So we open that, click Add, name it. Oops. We can say what kind of area it is. Maybe it doesn't, it's just other, we can call it a redevelopment area. We hit save, return to geographic areas. Now that's also here in our menu. Once you decide, though, from the menu of areas that you do have, which ones are going to be a priority area in your plan, you check those and click Save. Now you can edit them. And when you want to click Edit, because there are some questions that we ask about the geographic areas that you're going to include in a plan, that identifying the neighborhood boundaries, including specific housing and commercial characteristics, things like that that will help you explain to your, in your citizen participation process and other stakeholders why this is an important area for this plan. And that save and return, unfortunately, takes you straight back to the menu. Once we get back into the geographic target areas, once you've done that for all of the areas that you're going to include in your plan, and we're going to choose these three, you also want to describe the basic general allocation priorities, which is a requirement for the Consolidated Plan regulations. And you could also add maps of each of the areas here, add data about them, again, as we demonstrated before. So now that we've designated some geographic priorities, we move on to priority needs. And you have to add, you can add a priority needs until all of the types of needs that you have identified throughout the process of the needs assessment and market conditions. You can add as many needs as you need to. So we'll talk about need for affordable housing. Say that's high priority, provide a description. And then here you can talk about the populations that are affected by that need. And we'll just say it's large families, elderly heads of household, public housing residents. Obviously, there's many different options. And these are all drawn from the requirements in the regs to describe the priority needs of these different types of populations. You see how the target areas that we identified in that last screen are here as an option. So if I wanted to pick that neighborhood area, I can do that. If we'd had any goals entered, they would also show up here the same way the target areas had. I'm going to save this one for now. And we'll keep going. So the next screen that's connected in this progression towards the strategic plan is anticipated resources. So here you would describe your projected amount of funding for year one and the expected amount for the remainder of the con-plan year. I'm just going to choose $1 million for all of these just to save time. But I can also add additional funding sources. Oh, this will also tell me that if I don't save, I'm going to lose all the data I just entered. I can also add another source of funding. And then that will also show up as another option later on. That's $1 million. And it's continuum of care, McKinney-Vento. So it is eligible, we'll say, for overnight shelter. Source is required. Oh, sorry. And that's a federal source. Now we see it shows up here. The uses of funds are here. So we can see where we have areas of overlap in funding sources that we've added. So and now we get to the goals. You can add a goal here. Call it goal 1. Call it an affordable housing goal. Our strategic plan started in 2013, and we'll just say that we think that this one is actually only going to take us 2 years to accomplish, depending on what it is. So you can see sort of how you might be able to phase your goals and set expectations with your communities about how long it's going to take to accomplish these things. You can see here again that the geographic areas we entered before, the priority needs that we entered before, and the funding sources that we entered above are all showing up. So we'll just say we're going to allocate half of our CDBG and home for this goal. It's an affordable housing goal, and these are the goal outcome indicators, and this is a really important kind of pivot point for describing goals, because this will be also the way that you describe projects later on. The accomplishments from the 4 grant funds each feed into at least one of these goal outcome indicators, so that when it comes time to do your CAPER, your accomplishments will roll back towards what you said you were going to, what your goal was, and you'll be able to tell what kind of progress that you're making. So we'll say we're going to rehab, save and return. So now we have this goal. Once you have a number of goals, there's actually an option here to view a summary of them. This gives you a sense of where there might be overlap in your goals. In the interest of time, I'm going to move on to talking about the annual action plan. And I may just show you some of these things. So the expected resources in the annual action plan will be the same screen in a year 1 action plan that you submit with your consolidated plan. This screen is exactly the same as the anticipated resources in the strategic plan above, and that's so that you're not entering the same information twice. So you won't be able to make any of the changes here because you're only going to talk about resources once. For annual goals and objectives, you can set annual goals towards each of the goals that you set in your strategic plan. And so when we want to add a goal for this year, if we had more than one goal, this menu would have all of the goals that we had added. And you see, now that I've chosen that goal, these things have been chosen for me. But I can still say it's in this neighborhood, it's an affordable housing goal. How much am I going to allocate this year towards this goal? I think this is where it would be helpful to print out your strategic plan. Again, we'll show you how to do that so that you knew what your 5-year or 3-year goal was for goal 1, and you can say, well, this is what my annual goal is going to be. And same thing for the funding. I think this is half of what. And again, the goal outcome indicator, and it was rental units tabbed, and we said 50. So here, we'll say 25 this year. And then you could, if we had more goals, you could add more goals. If you ever needed to view or edit or delete, you can do that here. Okay. And you can also see how here you could also add a project, and that goal is there, but we're going to move on in the interest of time because there's still some other things we want to show you. So going back to the presentation, the next section of the demo is about preparing a plan for submission. And so we'll cover quality checks, printing a plan for public participation, and submission to HUD. So I'm going to go back to the demo again. So the quality checks function is up here in administration, this 8025 screen. And you see down here, now that we've actually added the plan, there's way more on the screen. Our data sources are here. The public housing agency we chose is here. You can browse and attach a cover page, a report header, a page header, all the things that you might want to use when you print out your report, attachments for citizen participation, other appendices, a grantee, the SF-424s and certifications. Once you have everything the way that you think you want it, you check the quality check, and it will tell you where there's information missing, and you can review. Here, obviously, a lot of information is missing because we did not enter a whole plan. So once you have it the way you want it for your citizen participation process, you will want to print a Word document. And you don't have to wait until the end. You can actually print a Word document throughout the process of development and use that if you'd like to, rather than writing your plan in IDIS. And this will give you the option of either downloading the entire consolidated plan or downloading an individual section. So say you're moving on to your annual action plan, you might just want to download the strategic plan so that you can refer back and forth. And I'm going to hit submit here, and this is going to take a long time to download because it just does take a while to download because the system is actually building you a report. But I downloaded one earlier, and you can see how the tables show up. And this would all show up this way if you printed the plan blank. The numbers are all there. And then here are some of those images that are similar to the ones that we just entered during this demonstration. So the map shows up, the population chart shows, the basic summary of data shows up, this chart that I imported as a JPEG shows up in the printed Word document. You can see it's still taking a while to download. It will, though, download. So once you've gone through your citizen participation process, you've gotten all your necessary approvals from local or state governments, whatever it is that your process is to get to submission, you go back to 8025, and this is the status down here. So the menu here has many options. What you do to submit it is just change the status to submit it for review. And that would notify your local field office that there's a plan ready for review. However, there's other options here. If you are in the middle of when this is open and in progress, your field office can't see your plan. If you want them to be able to see your plan so that they can help you out and provide you with feedback before you submit, you can actually change the status to open in progress FO review, field office review, and then they can see your plan and you can talk through it if you'd like to do that way. There's also a similar option in reverse for a field office that may have started to review your plan, they had questions, they wanted to give you a chance to make some changes or make something more clear. They can change it to reviewed and waiting for modifications, and then that opens the plan back up to you being able to make any changes, because once you've submitted it for review, you can only view the plan. It's view only. And then once everything is okay and the field office has determined that it contains all the necessary elements and that it is complete and consistent with the purpose of the Act, as it says in the regulations, they will change the status to reviewed and approved, and then your plan is done. So that concludes the demonstration portions of the this webinar. I'm going to return back to the presentation, and we just have some quick housekeeping things. I think we've actually answered most of the questions that have come forward through this process, or during the webinar. So we're going to move on. If you have a question that didn't get answered, there were some duplicates and others like that, so you can go ahead and send it to the CPD maps, or sorry, excuse me, the ConPlan mailbox, and we'll show you that in a minute. But the timeline for implementation, the use of the consolidated plan in IDIS is mandatory for ConPlan submitted on or after November 15th, 2012. And the notice describing the new requirement is at this link here on the screen. The annual action plan template, that's optional until you have a consolidated plan submitted in IDIS, and then you would be required to do it. Although there's an option, the standalone option is available, and there is an option there when you're adding an action plan to add a standalone action plan. And the instructions for doing that are in the desk guide. And so here we just have a quick summary of key resources: the website for the Consolidated Plan Template in IDIS, the desk guide for using IDIS to prepare the comp plan, action plan and CAPER, the form to request access, new IDIS access for grantee staff that don't already have access to IDIS, the ConPlan email address where you can send us questions or report any issues that you're having, and we will help you resolve them. And also you can find information about future webinars on the ConPlan training and TA page, and the link for that is here as well. So you should, like I said, you should be able to open these links now as this slide is visible to you, but we will be posting the slides in the next day or so, and so you should go back to the training and TA page and you can download the slides there. So unless we have any other questions that are ready to be answered, I guess there are a couple new questions.
We have a few that just came in that I just want to answer quickly before we sign off. We had a number of questions about doing practice plans and whether or not there'd be access to UIT to do practice plans. When Meg originally set up the plan today in the demonstration, she named the version of the plan. You can do the same thing. You can create multiple plans and you don't have to submit all of them. So basically you can do a practice plan in regular production IDIS and name it test version or whatever you'd like. Another group of questions we got was about grantees who are in the middle of their con plan, their 5-year strategic plan cycle, and whether or not they could do a standalone action plan. And I think Meg pretty much covered that. You can do a standalone action plan, but I did want to mention, because we had some questions about whether or not you'd have to fill in data for your other action plans or your con plan. The instructions are in the manual, as Meg mentioned, but you will just fill in a limited amount of data for your approved comp plan. That's a paper comp plan. You will not have to fill in data for all of your other action plans in order to do a standalone action plan. And I think that pretty much covers most of the questions we've been receiving today.
So thank you very much for participating, and I think our moderator has a couple of more tips for you before, and we really would appreciate it if you would fill out the survey because we will use those results to design future webinars.
Great. Thank you very much, Meg and Caitlin. And thanks everyone for taking the time to attend today's webinar. We did run just a bit over, so I appreciate you sticking with us. As Meg just mentioned, please do complete the survey. That really helps us get your thoughts for future webinars to improve them. Also, as mentioned, the recording of this presentation will be available on the Consolidated Plan website on the TA and training page next week. Stay tuned for the next webinar on May 23rd, which will be Orientation to CPD Maps. And once again, on behalf of the Office of Community Planning and Development,